By the power of Castle Hate Skull, I am Hella Mark Harley. Yes, I'm back. Yes, my hair is absolutely popping today. I put in the time, I put in the effort. People legitimately do ask me all the time, how do you get your hair like that? Women specifically go, how do you get your hair to have so much volume? And I tell them, I do the things that you aren't willing to do. I'm willing to sacrifice the feminine nature of my long hair for the masculine volume that everyone seeks, but not everyone is willing to do the work and go through the process. So maybe I'll talk about today. I don't know, but I washed it today. Yes, Casey.
My hair looks good too.
It does look good. Casey's like an everyday kind of hair looking good.
I'm pretty consistent
kind of guy. And we'll talk about your routine. I never thought to ask. I just thought maybe he wakes up like that.
Is he born with it? Maybe it's Maybelline.
Do you put any product in your hair?
I don't have any in right now. I do. I have a go-to.
Uh-huh.
It's a clay pomade.
Yes. I like that. I used to have that length hair, and that was a good one too. Like clay and pomade, and it's kind of stuck in place.
Yeah.
The issue with my thing is I kind of have to have it free-flowing a little bit, so I can't like just freeze it into place, but also it has to have volume, but can't look too messy. And I try to do messy stuff and not wash it, and then it gets like flattened when you're sleeping, and I can't really get that out of it. So I washed it today. I bought some new shampoo. That was the thing. Apparently, like a lot of shampoos have this ingredient, and there's a class action lawsuit going around where there's like this ingredient in there, and I'll follow up more. I know I'm not going to bring out the exact information that I should be in preparation to speak about this topic, but apparently there's something in there that could potentially cause hair loss. So this is one of these like luxury-ish brands that's like, coconut oil conditioner kind of thing, and you can get it at Target or whatever, but it is like, it smells nice and it looks nice, and you would think that people aren't putting things that are going to make your hair fall out in shampoo, and I guess it's debatable the degree to which that ingredient is in the actual mixture and whether or not it causes hair loss, but it would seem that on its own it's something that causes hair loss. So I'll be looking into it, but I'm blaming my balding on that for now, and avoiding any sort of personal responsibility for steroid use and mismanagement moving forward. I found my scapegoat. Das Shampoo. But to wrap up that rant, you got to make texture. Women don't like texture in their hair, right? I can make it rough and put stuff in there such as hairspray, such as blowout spray, such as mousse, and comb it backwards and do certain things that you just can't. So that's my benefit. But maybe they don't even care. I just feel like people use conversation starters like that. Like, what do you do to your hair? And really, they're like, I want to talk to you. You seem so cool and interesting. And I accept that. But people do it all the time. I don't know if I've talked about the fact that I used to have these earrings that I lost the little balls for. I'm playing football, and remember those earrings that would have like the ball that attaches in the end, right? Well, every time you took them out, that's where it would clip. I lost one of the balls, and so I'm like improvising. I flipped it upside down, and the part where the ball went now pinches up here. So it starts here and comes up here. Now, to the outside observer who doesn't know what I've done, it looks like it's pierced twice. I noticed women would be highly fascinated with that. And it planted that idea of, women or anybody really, we need these neutral conversation starters to get into something. It's visible, but not quite my appearance. So it's not as if you're going like, you're attractive, I want to talk to you, or I'm hitting on you in a direct way. But I think for women, especially to a guy, it's a form of peacocking, I guess. That's where when I heard that theory at first, I was like, yes, that makes sense, because if you give yourself something to stand out and also allow somebody to talk to you about, so now you know why I keep my long hair. So strangers start a conversation with me. Same with muscles, but get you a random conversation starter, an RCS. Okay, here's what I actually wanted to jump into. Help. I'm on steroids. I slapped myself kind of hard right there, probably harder than I have in any other episode. Wake up. So my buddy, a guy who I've been talking to, because I do talk to people on Instagram. This guy happens to be in Los Angeles nearby, and he ran out of testosterone. People will hit me up, always emergency mode. Like it's, usually not like, hey, so I'm planning for the year. It's like, I'm out and I need it right now. And that's fine. I always do want to help people. This is one of those instances where he's like, can you give me a bottle of, whatever? And I was able to hook him up. And he was very grateful. This was the first time we'd meeting after having been talking, and he watches the show and all this and that. And he was really cool. Like, it was really nice to hear when somebody goes like, oh, you're the same on the show that you are. It's like, well, I don't know how else I'd be. But yes, I do really want to help people. In this instance, he was telling me that he'd been taking 300 milligrams of test per week and having tremendous results. And he was almost sort of surprised by it. Like, I'm getting stronger and I'm getting bigger. I don't know if it's the test. Like, of course, it's the test and your hard work, but that is a sufficient dose. It's double a TRT dose. You're going to get results with it if you're training hard and eating enough protein. So he was just really excited to see his lifts going up everywhere, and he was feeling good. And, he gave me some low carb cinnamon bun, like high protein, low carb cinnamon bun stuff that I'll get the name of them, but they were awesome. People, I do find you help them out and I don't expect anything, but they will try to hook you up. And that was really cool. He comes to me this week and he's like, yo, everything's great except like I'm getting acne. What's the deal? Is that inevitable? I would say I've been able to mitigate acne on my end. Like, the first time I ever took a cycle, I had horrible acne. And I made a number of mistakes, like combining test and DECA potentially. It could be a progesterone thing. I stupidly took antibiotics that you can be prescribed acne fighting antibiotics. I was not doing, I just did a lot of stupid things haphazardly that ended up in some of the worst bacne I've ever had, or the worst bacne really I've ever had in my life. And it was 4 weeks into the cycle. So it wasn't immediate, who knows, but something was off and I made, mistakes, and it just creates this thing where you're proud of your body and you want to show it off. And then all of a sudden you feel super ashamed of your body and have to cover it up. So you want to really avoid that. And I did have acne growing up, even when I was natural, especially during football and wrestling. It's tough. And the hormones plus the sweat and all these different things, I don't know. I think a lot of guys could probably benefit from learning how to actually do proper skincare. But I remember Accutane was something you could go take, but it was sold to me so scary. Oh my God, your whole face is going to dry up and you're going to feel like a lizard and your skin's going to crack and it's going to make you crazy. A couple of people killed themselves and they're on Accutane. Blame that. I just remember there's all these horror stories around it that made it so I wouldn't have even considered that. The people made it seem so bad. But in retrospect, I wish I just would have taken it for a few months, and then, you can it's seemingly cure acne for the rest of your life. Did you ever take Accutane or anything?
No.
You never had a zit in your life, Casey. Thanks. No, that makes me feel good. It's just oh no, you're entitled. You're lucky, and you don't realize. You look down on people who did have skin problems, and think that it's representative of some moral flaw, some character deficiency. Right? That's God's way of punishing people who don't adhere to Christian values, right? We've had this discussion elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's yeah, more or less, yes. You're a terrible human.
Go with God.
God hates you and represents that with zits. God hates zits. Now, what I can tell him in this case is that it might be a function of your estrogen being out of control, right? So that's the first step you can take. Now, apparently it might be something, I am not an expert on this, right? But I know for at least one possibility of what could be causing acne is you have too much, estrogen in your body, or this ratio is out of whack. And you would start by using an AI, an aromatase inhibitor like anastrozole, and simultaneously, at first, also tamoxifen. And tamoxifen is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, a SERM. It binds to the receptor site and competes for actual estradiol, so that less of the estradiol in your body actually binds to the receptor and has the effect of an estrogen molecule. So you want to run and again, there's debate over how you would do that exactly, but I know if I'm having an issue like gyno symptoms or acne or puffiness, I would, and I need to take action immediately, I would combine the two, right? Because the tamoxifen, the Nolvadex is sort of like, it will take effect and stop the estrogen from acting on you right away. The other thing is too much estrogen conversion. Well, you're a step behind because you're preventing the test in your body from converting to estrogen and then binding, but that's a two-step process. So you're only stopping the first part. If there's already estrogen in your body, that needs to be blocked. So I'd probably start out like running that like a week, a normal daily dose, 1/4 milligram of anastrozole, 1 milligram maybe every other day or every third day, something like that. I don't think there's need for anything more than half a gram to a gram at a time. So we'll see. And if it's not that, then you got something else on hand. I also would say tanning, can be a quick way to use UV light to kill the bacteria under your skin. And if that doesn't work, maybe Accutane's something you can look into. But I just told him, look, I would want I can tell you right now, go to lralabs.com and use promo code HELLA for 15% off of the Nolvadex and anastrozole. But Accutane, I don't know so much about. You'd want to make that decision for yourself, and you can get it off the dark web. You can also get it from a doctor. It's always a pain in the ass going to a dermatologist, but that's something you have to weigh for yourself. I can't just be like, yeah, do it. Sounds great. It's going to be perfect. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. I feel actually less comfortable recommending Accutane to somebody than I would anabolic steroids. That's just me. Boy, speaking of gaining muscle and looking amazing in clothing, yes, I am wearing an Oak & Stone clothing shirt right now. And remember when I teased a big announcement that so many people were like, oh my God, is this BS? Is Mark making up a fake promo once again to just trick us into going to oakandstoneclothing.com and use code HELLA for 10% off at checkout? No, I was not. I have word officially from the official Instagram account of Oak & Stone Clothing that this Friday, we're going to begin the biggest sale of the year. All items are 40% off. You heard it right. 40, not 14, like some people are scratching their heads and asking themselves if they heard. 40% off. So that means if something's $100, it's now 60. And guess what? If you use code HELLA, you're going to get another 10% off. Now, is that going to be 10% of 60 or 10% of 100? I don't know. But you're going to get an even steeper discount than 40% if you go to the store and use code HELLA, which I encourage you to do. By the time this episode's live, this sale will be live, and it's going to run through the end of November at least. So go check it out. Use code HELLA, support your boy, get some great clothes, give some great clothes since the holiday season is approaching, and you're not somebody who doesn't give gifts, right? Well, speaking of being on one, yes, I am on Kratom right now. Now, every single time I do a podcast, I take that shot of Happy Hippo Kratom. Where do I get it? happyhippo.com. What do I use when I want to be frisky and pretend like I don't get it free at the Thick Boy office? I use promo code ThickBoy, 3 C's, to get 20% off and just give a little back, because Happy Hippo has given me so much as far as Kratom and an opportunity to do ad reads. So I encourage you guys to check it out, use it responsibly, and just let it rip. All right, we got a brand new segment, Steroids in the News. I thought this was interesting. We click on this link here. Senators asking the Biden administration to loosen restrictions on testosterone access. So the caption here says, long before he was the president, Joe Biden bullied medical experts on the stand in Congress in 1990 when he pushed the Anabolic Steroid Control Act. He ignored all the advice of the AMA, CDC, and the HHS and demanded hormones made in the human body to become a criminal offense because these drugs were considered by him to be dangerous. Now, 30 years later, he is looking at the prospect of making testosterone legal for women that want to transition. I think everybody should be able to responsibly use hormones for whatever reasons they deem necessary. And then actually could do, I think there's some funny comments down there. Oh yeah, I identify as 260 pounds of lean muscle mass. Yes, that was the one I was looking for. So this was interesting, and I actually didn't realize it at first that was the angle of it, is like you loosen testosterone access so that women who want to transition to men have easier access to it, but it belies this principle that for the most part, this is not a dangerous thing. I don't think that there's any real evidence of steroid rage or whatever, roid rage, leading to increased criminal activity, whatever. I do think these two things are completely separate issues and depend on the individual. So I think it's just, in general, this Steroid Control Act is, a misclassification of a drug, much in a similar way that, marijuana and psychedelics are Schedule 1, and, methamphetamine and opiate painkillers are Schedule 2. So those are less illegal than things like weed and LSD, which I would consider largely and especially comparatively harmless. I do think it's time to relook at that. And if the trans push is what gets it to the forefront or gets it, looked at with fresh eyes, that's great. But it's the same as marijuana in that sense, where it's like, sure, there are real dangers to it. I hate when people pitch this as something that doesn't have any sort of consequences whatsoever, and I always hate when people pitch weed like that. And I've smoked a lot of weed in my life, but people will always be like, no, dude, it's great, man. It's going to make you more creative, and it cures cancer, and just like, this is the medicine you need. And it's like, hey, you're high all the time, and you're just trying to get other people around you high, so it's less awkward interacting with them, and you feel better about your lifestyle choices, okay? But I don't think that it should be outlawed. I just think it should be educated. What else? Oh, yes, and then we have this interesting video here that I thought was a nice counterpart to it. This is Michaela Peterson talking
get back to
Derek.
Function dependent on the duration of exposure. So if you've been doing TRT for like 15 years or something and you technically didn't need it when you started it, are you going to be able to recover to natural function if you then decide, I want to try and come off? It kind of depends, because again, it's almost like there is a use it or lose it thought process that goes into different organs in your body. So if you shut down the signal to your testicles for a decade and a half and you have like shriveled atrophy testicles and then you try to recover to baseline, it's not as simple as just pulling out the testosterone and then everything just works perfectly. Like, you're going to deal with a very, very arduous recovery phase where you might end up hating your quality of life so much on that recovery phase that you just end up staying on the testosterone.
Is there actually no way to get off?
So the question, because we missed that part, was, can you get off TRT once you start it? Now, Derek does a good job of outlining the worst case scenario in which you might experience some difficulties, 15 years of testosterone replacement. And also, because he's portraying somebody as having atrophied testicles, you probably aren't doing any sort of HCG or Clomid intermittently, like 2 to 4 times a year, like I try to aim for, to make sure that, if there is any atrophy, it reverses to some degree, and I get them boys working, right? But people ask me, right, the conservative kind of people, like the kind of person, I've talked to somebody recently who was like, I'm scared to go on growth hormone. I want to take growth hormone, but I'm scared. Do I have to go on all the time? Is it something like, if I stop, I'm like, oh my God. I appreciate that energy, because we need cautious people in the world. You can't all be a reckless asshole like me. However, the answer for TRT is yes, you can go on for 6 months. Yes, you can go on for a year, and there's very little risk, especially in that time frame. If you do a proper PCT, post-psychotherapy recovery process, I would bet $1,000 you can get your levels right back to where they were in the first place. Maybe even more, because if you were unhappy with your levels in the first place and you just jumped into TRT rather than optimizing everything else, like doing HCG, doing Clomid, getting better sleep, looking at your diet, looking at your exercise and weightlifting. Like, there's all these other things that you can do naturally to maximize your testosterone beyond what it is now, living as a wage slave in modern society. But a lot of people want the easy answer, and that does fix a lot of things. But, it's not everything. But can you risk, like I tell people, give it 6 months. Don't give it a month. Don't do the stupid SARM shit like, 8 weeks of SARM is going to fix my problems. No, it's not at all. You're going to set yourself back. But test for 6 months to a year just to see if you like it. I think it can be done safely, effectively, and it may be the answer for you. All right, we got a lot of people have been asking me. This person asked me something that relates to their 95-pound, 98-pound, 16-year-old daughter, but I think can be illustrative of a principle that I think everybody can follow, because the question is, hey, Mark, legit question. I do like when people say legit question because it conveys a sincerity, right? It's like, this is not a fake-ass, stupid question. I am not a hater. I like when people come to me with that. Low, it's like hands up. No, I come in peace. No weapons. Legit question. I have a 16-year-old daughter, 5 foot, 98 pounds, has been doing wrestling and jits. I also love it when people call it jits. It's like, dude, I don't even have time for the Jews. Just the jits. What if that becomes a racist slur? Like, all the jits. What? The Jew jits. Since what about Christian jits? Why is it always Jew jits? Banned. If you wonder what happened, this was the moment where it all went downhill. I made an anti-Semitic joke. Since she was, she's been doing jits since she was 6 and is looking to gain weight as her coach wants her to wrestle at 105 this year. She lifts and hits cardio hard for conditioning. What do you recommend for legit weight gain? So again,
kind of bookended with the legit there.
Dude, yeah, it's a legit sandwich right now. And that question was the creamy Oreo filling, and I'm gonna lick it up right now. Let's start with the basics. I said, and again, I'm saying this because these are things you can ask yourself, and you can then ask anybody else, because there's always this common theme of, hey, Mark, I want to put on weight. Hey, Mark, I want to lose weight. Hey, Mark, I want to do anything that involves a recomposition of your body, whether that's losing fat, gaining weight at separate times or doing them together. The first step for most of my questions, and especially even the steroid ones, because the steroid ones are like, you aren't ready for steroids if you don't answer these questions first, right? If you don't have this sorted out, I would consider this a very foundational thing, that you are not ready to implement anabolic steroids on yourself if you don't know these things. And I'm asking this person, let's start with the basic. Does she track her calories? Does she have an understanding of roughly how many calories she burns in a day on workout days and rest days? What does the lifting program look like? Exactly. Does she get individual coaching to ensure proper form and progressive overload in her programming? Because it's like a lot to say, like, I lift and I do cardio. That means virtually nothing to me, outside the fact that I get you're active, and I would expect that from a high school student who's very active and competitive in sports. But I need the specifics, and we need to understand how those specifics would play into your weightlifting, because, or you're gaining weight really, because if you're doing too much cardio, it's going to be harder, right? If you don't understand how to put yourself in a caloric surplus for your weight and activity level, it's going to be impossible to gain weight. And you also, like I talked last week about Mike Perry, doing these like short bursts of HIIT cardio, et cetera. There is a way, I think, to optimize your cardio training where you get the biggest bang for your buck and actually can prepare yourself, either stay at the same cardiovascular performance level or enhance it without doing long distance steady state cardio. And I do think wrestling is one of those sports. I did wrestling, and there was always this notion of like, the wrestling's the hardest sport, in the high school, and like the practices are harder because we do like, 2 to 7 mile runs, and then you do 400-yard sprints around the track, and then we're doing live rounds for this many minutes, and the New Year's Day practice is like the hardest thing ever, and you're supposed to be, all this stuff. And that's cool. On one element, I like having done that because it's psychologically beneficial, especially when you're competing, to be like, I know I outworked this guy. But is that necessary? I don't know. Well, I don't think so, actually. And I think you can condense your conditioning for explosive anaerobic sports like wrestling, because again, 6 minutes, this is not a marathon race. You can break that down to a few times a week where you're progressively overloading your anaerobic lactic acid threshold. Okay. His response was no on calories. So she doesn't track her calories. And will say yes on the understanding of calories in and calories out. And yes, she has a personal trainer working with her once a week to track progress, inform, and make adjustments every week when they meet. So that's all positive. That's all good. I would say invest some time. This is my final response. I would say invest some time, like say 2 weeks to a month, where she tracks everything strictly, day in and day out. I want exactly, if you cheat on your diet, if you don't eat enough, doesn't matter. You have to be honest with yourself. So you can get a sense of the actual number on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to actually know what's coming in your body and then correlate that to the results you're getting, right? Did you gain weight over those 2 weeks? Did you lose weight over those 2 weeks? Then I'd like to hear more about what her training consists of exactly, both with her trainer during their session and then after as well. Because let's be honest, some trainers suck. Some trainers do this BS, and I've done this many times where I go to like a 24-hour fitness or a new gym and they offer me a free training session and I go in and act like I don't know anything. I go like, I just have muscles. I don't know, and teach me what you know, expert. And they give you a lot of BS, right? Like general stuff that sounds good, but you can tell they don't know the why behind it. I can tell you to do 3 sets of 10 to failure, but why? How is that sport specific? How low should I go on a squat? How demanding are you going to be that I do perfect form and incorporate exercises that are actually going to translate into increased performance or muscular hypertrophy? So who knows? It's a positive step. I'm sure, I hope that she learned something from the trainer. It's better than just figuring out by yourself, probably, but you got to get more and more detail, right? You got to get more and more, what exactly are you doing? How have your results been so far? Have you put on any muscle? What have the results been so far with the trainer? I don't know. So I'm looking forward to hearing back from him. And I like doing stuff like that because it's it's taking the general and funneling it into if you give me more information, I can troubleshoot at least one thing. If I can give every one of my followers one helpful piece of advice, then you guys all owe me money, okay? That's what I'm saying. Give me $1. 60,000 followers, $60,000. I think that's what I'm getting at here. So hit me up. I will give you one small piece of advice, and then you owe me $1. Cash App at Hella Mark Harley. Okay, let's look at this video right here. Under Bro Science Academy. Should you lose fat fast or slow? This dude's hilarious.
You've got to lose fat slowly because it's the only sustainable way. It's the only way you'll keep it off. Slow and steady wins the race. Fucking yawn fest. Boring and wrong. Anybody who tells you you need to lose fat slowly simply does not know what the fuck they are doing. You can lose 10 kilos in 4 weeks.
In
or
4
you can lose
weeks?
it in 15 weeks. Whether you keep it off has nothing to do with how quickly you lost it. Once the fat is gone, it is simply a case of knowing enough about the foods that you eat. How many calories are in this food? What are the macros in this food? Protein, carbs, fats. How much of these foods can I eat without turning myself into a fat cat again? If you know the answer to these questions, if you've been taught properly, then the fat will stay off. This is why we can get 20 kilos off you motherfuckers in 10 weeks and it stays off. Because in those 10 weeks, we've gone so hard at teaching you this stuff. Educating you on the food you eat. Teaching you how to eat it without being a fucking fat cat. This means after those 10 weeks, you know what you are doing and the fat will stay off. Do not slow down fat loss. Do not go slow and steady for the sake of sustainability. That doesn't make any sense and it's boring as all fuck. We get the fat off you fucking quick and as it's coming off, we teach you what you need to be able to keep it off. If you don't know how to do that, the dumb fuck PTs at your local gym definitely don't know how to do that. Go to the link in my bio and I'll teach you.
All right. Didn't mean to give that guy, a plug for free, but also I don't mind because I like what he said at the end, which is don't go to the know-nothing PTs, at your local gym. What he's saying here, I actually agree with. And you can lose fat at whatever pace you want, but I think the reason that it's so effective when done quickly is it's going to be painful either way. And it's going to require executive decision-making energy that is finite to make a deficit, whether big or small, because when you're doing a small deficit, there's actually smaller room for error. So you have to track more diligently and know that you're in this like little weight loss zone and worry about it as something and think about it as like, I need to be in a deficit. I need to make sure that I exercise more or eat less every day for a longer period of time. And that's actually harder to sustain. I've done a lot of effective, I remember I lost, 10 pounds in a week for a film where a guy wanted me to look, like I was not as muscular, right? I'm not going to like go from 230 pounds to look like skinny in a week, but you can, make a difference in your appearance. And what I found was by doing something that extreme, and at another point in my life when like I was depressed and I shook myself out of it and did like an hour of, the Stairmaster every day for 2 weeks and got really ripped, you actually can stay there, right? If you do it really fast and commit the time and lose all that fat, it's going to be, again, unpleasant either way. Whether it's a 200 calorie deficit or an 800 calorie deficit or a 1,000 calorie deficit, it's going to be a deficit and you're probably going to feel a little bit hungry. Do I want to be doing a deficit and a bunch of cardio but you're already there, right? Like, is 20 minutes that much different from 40 minutes of cardio? You're going to probably lose some muscle if you've been building up either way. So I'd rather get to that baseline. And I saw it with Isaiah did a show and he's been bulking after the show. And he can eat quite a bit of calories, but because he got down to that super lean body weight, it's actually easier to manage when you're eating high protein and you're lifting weights. Like, he's still ripped, but putting on muscle because you can eat at maintenance or slightly above and only gain a tiny amount of fat, and you're gaining more muscle, comparatively. So you actually maybe even look leaner in some ways, or at least as lean. So that's something to think about and try. And that's something, for example, that Grego Gallagher recommends is like do aggressive fat loss and then bulk from there. And it's also going to be more visually and psychologically rewarding to get down and feel ripped. Even if you're skinny and you feel like, oh, I'm not as strong or muscular, it looks good. And then from there, you can build upwards and actually see the incremental progress in muscle building, which, again, that's not something you can really force or do fast. If you do, it's probably water weight. If you're gaining muscle really fast, you're either gaining a bunch of fat with it, you're using anabolics that are going to artificially enhance you. And so when you stop, as he's saying, like, just because you do the fat loss fast, it's not going to bounce back automatically. But if you try to gain muscle or size fast because of a substance, when you get off it, yes, you will lose that. And most of these substances aren't safe to take for a long period of time. So again, muscle building is different. You can't speed it up truly, but fat loss you can. And so you'll appreciate that a lot more if you do it like that, rather than being, I'm going to take a year to lose 10 pounds. You could do that. If that's the only way you can think it works, but like, why not just lose it in the next month and then be full every day because you're eating at maintenance calories? Okay. That brings me to this quick thing about carb cycling. Carb cycling is like using different amounts of carbs in a given week. For example, like you have a high, medium, and low carb day. I need to look into more. I've never implemented this for myself, but I know it's a hot topic and sort of an advanced bodybuilding topic. And I think something that, like, even if you're more of a casual lifter, you can use these principles, because I do think people get stuck in this idea of like, if I'm eating on this diet, I have to eat the same amount of carbs every day or whatever. And you can just be conscious of like what days you might want to use higher carbs, and when you're eating higher carbs, what are the best things to pair with it as far as protein and fats. So quick review of a video that he breaks down. Again, Anabolic Bodybuilding is the channel, and Paul Barnett is the dude. He's very smart, a little bit dry and nerdy, but I like that kind of thing. And so hopefully I can give you a condensed version of that. And you can check it out for yourself if you want more. But basically, on a carb cycling situation, you calculate your macros by these principles. Your protein should be on a high carb day around 0.7 to 1 grams of protein. Scientific studies have confirmed that 0.7 is actually sufficient to gain muscle in non-enhanced athletes. If you're enhanced, as most bodybuilders are, you probably want to use a little bit higher. But for at least non-enhanced athletes with sufficient carbohydrate intake, 0.7 is okay. So let's see, that'd be like 175 grams for me, a 250-pound meal, I believe. So but then if you're doing a lower carb day, right, a medium and low day, you want to crank that up. Carbs have a protein sparing and muscle sparing effect. So the lower carbs you eat, the more protein you want to intake, because not only is it more satiating, but it's also you need it for the purpose of preventing your body from eating its own muscle. Then you want to go into what kind of carbs you're supposed to eat. What does that number look like? I'll use the weight of 250 pounds for myself, although I'm probably not that much right now, but I have been this year a lot. 4 calories per gram on a high day. So I could be eating 1,000 grams of carbohydrates on a high day. There's no minimum requirement of carbs, right? It's just something that helps activities like strength training, and it can help make you feel better. But he had an interesting point, actually. He said less than 100 grams, you might as well go down to 0 because you're going to feel like shit anyway, right? So you may as well, and especially I guess if you're doing this intermittently, people always talk about like this transition period as you go into ketosis or whatever. You can never go into ketosis or go, fully adapt to it if you're doing different days, right? So it was an interesting point. It's like less than 100 grams, you might as well be 0. On a low day, you're going to eat 1 gram per pound of body weight. So, a low day of carbs would still be 250 carbs for me, or 240 probably now. And 1.5 would be like 360 to 375 for a medium day, right? And then again, the high day, 3 to 4 grams per pound. So I'd be 750 to 1,000. But you want those to be good carbs: rice, bread, pasta, things like that aren't just pure sugar, right? Now, fat. He had some interesting takes on this as well. We're talking about essential fatty acids, right? Saturated fat is something that is non-essential. You have it in your body already, right? You fat fuck. And, on high carb days, you're spiking your insulin or potentially even using your insulin, right? Using exogenous insulin. On high carb days, you want it as close to 0 as possible. You're taking in 1,000 grams of carbohydrates, or even if you're 200 pounds, 600 to 800 grams of carbs in a day. Do you need any fat? What would you need that for, right? You need some minimum, very small amount to digest vitamins and other essential functions in your body, but none of you are at that place where you have so little fat in your body that, you're going to break down if you take a day where you don't eat fats. When you add fats to a situation when you're spiking your insulin, either through eating a large amount of carbs or injecting it, you're going to gain more fat. So people mess up this insulin thing, for example, by, eating fats when they're taking this insulin or spiking their insulin, and that's shuttling nutrients to be stored as energy, and you're inadvertently storing more fat, right? But he talked about like fat dudes who will always be like, I think it's really important to eat more fats. He's like, well, look at you. You're a fat fuck. Like, obviously that's not working for you. And let's see, on the low days of carbs, you wanted to eat 0.3. So I think that worked out for me. It was like 79 grams of fat, and it worked out to like 680 calories of fat. And then on a medium day, you'd be half of that. So, let's say 40-ish grams of fat. You don't need that much, right? And I think that's probably the easiest way for people to overeat, because you look at those grams and you don't calculate the fact that you're eating 9 calories, over twice as much in calories per gram of a fat. You don't need that much. And you need even less saturated fat. So we're talking about essential fatty acids, and, also I've been recently getting into the chia seeds and the flax seeds and all these other like healthy fats, because again, I don't think animal protein is as bad as vegans say it is, but it's also not needed. So I don't know. I'm going to be looking more into this carb cycling thing and like what the exact theory of it is and how, what will high days and low days look like, etc. But like, guess what? If you're not running or working out, you don't need as many carbs, And also, if you're not bodybuilding in general, you probably have no need for 1,000 grams of carbs. But if you are, look into it, dude. Boom. How far have we gone into this nether region?
40.
Okay. Guess what? Oh, here's another thing, too. The truth about salt. I thought this was a great slide. Because, again, these are counterintuitive things that there's so much in the fitness world and our culture in general. Like I said before, like vegans will have you believe that whatever, animal proteins and animal fats are the source of every illness and high cholesterol is the cause of all these problems rather than just like correlated with other things. And I think there is just a lot of misinformation that's sometimes as bad as the fact that, you look at the food pyramid and we're pitched the idea that like we need 11 servings of grains every day, but only 1 serving of eggs or whatever the fuck it was, which has been debunked and stupid. And we see how, yeah, man, that's probably fueled by industries in America that serve as the backbone for our food distribution. The cereal lobby or the grain lobby, whatever the fuck, the corn lobby in America is very powerful. I saw that Matt Damon movie. What's it called? I forget. Something with it. The Informant. Price fixing in the corn industry. Corn is in everything. So you wonder why that's pushed on you. So salt's another thing where people always people will ask me about high blood pressure, and I'm not a doctor, but I have some ideas about it. And one thing, for example, is, I don't know, have you used like tadalafil, which is a vasodilator, also known as Cialis, but aside from making your dick hard, it gives you good pumps in the gym and also can relieve blood pressure symptoms because it's helping your blood flow more. That could be a simple fix. Because blood pressure is in fact correlated with a lot of other diseases. That's one thing that seems to be very important and people should fixate more on. But compared to something like cholesterol as an indicator of potential health problems in the future or early death, but they recommend low salt. I've had friends with blood pressure issues, and it's always like, I have to watch my salt according to my doctor. But let's be honest, that's bullshit. I'm going to read this. There's a few slides here. Low salt diet consequences. 70% of people with normal blood pressure do not have lower blood pressure with salt restriction. 15 to 16% will have an increase in blood pressure by going on a low salt diet. 15 to 17% will have a decrease in blood pressure by going on a low salt diet. So it's a wash, right? Equal either way. Nearly 100% will have an increase in heart rate. Let's do the swipe. Stress on the heart equals heart rate times blood pressure. This is almost always worsened with low salt intakes. Low salt intake, higher rate of your heart, and that's half of the equation, in the stress on your heart. If blood pressure remains equal and your heart rate goes up, it's more stress on your heart. That is almost always worsened with low salt intakes. Low salt diets increase stress hormones, insulin and glucose, uric acid, blood viscosity, cholesterol, and triglycerides. Low salt diets worsen kidney function, good cholesterol, energy levels, exercise performance, insomnia, bone health, cognition, hydration, muscle gains, pump, erectile dysfunction, insulin sensitivity. Low salt diets increase magnesium loss in sweat and urine, calcium and magnesium loss from bone, potassium loss from tissues, iodine deficiency, water loss, adrenal hypertrophy, peripheral vascular resistance, insulin resistance, sugar cravings, and overeating because you want to obtain salt. The average intake of salt throughout history: Romans 25 grams, 16th century Europe 40 grams, Sweden 16th century 100 grams, 18th century Europe 70 grams, France 1725 13 to 15 grams, Switzerland 23 grams, U.S. military 18 grams, U.S. after refrigeration 8 to 10 grams. So crazy, right? We now consume, because sodium's always pitched to us as this big problem, but look at how we have eaten salt compared to other cultures in history. We now consume half to a tenth of the salt we used to consume throughout history. However, we consume 30 to 75 times the sugar. Holy shit, right? Think about that. Think about that statistic, 30 to 75 times the sugar. And I always think about that too, because I love thinking about like how we arrived at certain things and how they betray our evolution, right? You couldn't gather the blueberries to overeat on carbs the way that we can, you know, with like you get a bag of sugar and you're eating like a year's worth of your entire village's blueberry supply. You ever think about the old blueberry conundrum?
I never stopped thinking about it. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll come in and just find Casey lost in thought, and he's like, dude, the blueberries.
The blueberries.
You'd fill up this whole room with blueberries before you could eat them.
Sometimes you don't even have to say anything to me, and you're just like, he's in the blueberry.
The blueberry zone.
Yeah.
Casey's in the blueberry zone.
Just leave him alone. Just let him get through it.
Hey. You don't want to. I once made the mistake of taking Casey out of his blueberry trance. It did not end well for me. Mm-hmm. It was blueberry pie in my face, metaphorically speaking. So it is something I always think about because, like, we just have access to too much sugar, and it's in everything. You talk to people from different cultures too, like. Aussies would always come over here, or Brits, they'd be like, everything's sweet. Like, what the fuck? Like, everything. Has anybody ever said that to you?
No.
Okay. Next on, is Mark making this up? Is Mark lying about friends from different countries that he doesn't have? So, yes, I have heard that from several sources. I don't know, because I'd love a compare and contrast. People love to shit on America, too, when they come here. It's like, yes, but sometimes it is true. Like Lotta will reference like food prices in Germany, and it's like, it's true. Getting individual servings of high quality food in Germany for the average middle class person is significantly cheaper. You can sort of get like the Costco equivalent price per unit, and they just don't have that here. But I always thought it was bullshit. And so who knows? Could be true, but they do put sugar in everything. It's just a cheap way to like make something taste better. But that's the issue. And when you're eating so much sugar, right? I noticed this when I first did keto, was like when you go back and cheat for a day. I used to eat, my cheat meal was a whole apple pie from Costco, eaten mostly in one sitting. Everything gets inflamed, right? You're retaining water. If you're retaining water, guess what? Your vascular system isn't working optimally because more fluid in the same amount of skin and organs and space in your body means things are going to be tighter. That's my idiot brain trying to break down a medical phenomenon, but I know it's true because I've experienced it. My face would get puffy. It would feel like I'd have an allergy or a cold inside my nose because your mucous membranes are inflaming. You just feel this level of discomfort. You get edema. So I noticed it so drastically, and I've never had like salt have that effect on me. If you're eating like a low carb diet and salt, like I just think there's a limit to it. Unless you're like, you can't. You can do this with sugar, but like try doing. You can't just like open up your mouth and take in a bunch of salt. Believe me, I've tried, and it's something to think about. Stop being a salt pussy. Live like but then, it's another thing where like, hey, Liver King is onto something, or these people who eat carnivore diets, it's like, that's the thing that they're getting right, despite common wisdom. Okay. I wanted to go on this other stuff. I'm just going to be real quick about this. Hella Historical. Is there a segment called Hella Historical already? Have I done it? I don't know, but when I hear Joe Rogan talk to these guys, these are my favorite types of Joe Rogan interviews, is the Egyptologists. Do you know what I'm talking about, Casey? Okay. So these guys he has on, I believe one of the guys' name's Grant Hancock, but I could be totally wrong. But they basically they're like the bad boys of archaeology because there's these phenomenons like, for example, in North America, like I've probably talked about this before, how if you're just doing archaeology, nobody was in native North America before like 15,000 years ago because there's no artifacts of these people who traveled along the coast to set up encampments that would ultimately be washed away by the surf, right? So there's no physical artifacts. However, if you're a linguist, you can analyze the fact that the number of languages in a given geographical area, it would be impossible for these 200 languages that have proliferated from, northern Canada and Alaska all the way down to South America. it couldn't have happened in 15,000 years or 30,000 years even. So it's more like 50,000, you know, like you get a more accurate dating of certain things by going outside of archaeology. These guys are like, yo, everything you think about the timeline of ancient Egypt is totally wrong. And when people present this idea to you of like, how do we build the pyramids? You know, like it's still a mystery. It isn't just this thing that, you know, we sort of recently been fed of like, here we have this paint, like this drawing that indicates that they were pouring water on the sand, and that's how they drug these 5-ton blocks of granite or whatever stone 500 miles, you know, and built them. Like, when you hear about the actual dimensions and weight of the rocks that were being moved, and we have no idea how they were doing it, and the fact that, for example, they were taking the equivalent of these rocks from Los Angeles to like Eureka, California, you know, like the northern tip of the state. In ancient Egypt, right? Like hundreds of them. It's insane. And essentially the thing here that stuck with me is the prediction or possibility that they had an alternative technology that wasn't like what we're aware of now. And I like thinking about that with alien stuff too. Like if you believe the guy who came on and talked about, you know, like working at Area 51 and they like, you know, he was exposed or like saw alien technology that like, it looks different, you know, like it didn't have any hard angles or pieces to it. Or it's using a, you know, it's propelling itself with a non-combustion engine, right? By potentially warping gravity or whatever. It's hard for you to wrap your mind around because like, you know, travel for us is independent, is irrevocably linked with combustion, right? Or moving things is linked with using leverage and mechanical advantage. The machinery that we use, the technology that we use to get really heavy things higher up is all mechanical advantage and leverage based. You know, and that can be automated, a machine or whatever, but a simple machine is a pulley, you know, and the technology is just an extension of that. So I think it would have been hard when you first, you know, whatever, like Morse code. Isn't that like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the most basic digital technology. Because it's a 0 and a 1, like either this or that, the binary system of Morse code, I assume, would be like the beginnings of how we use the internet. You know, that's an ignorant statement, but that's my guess, right? The person who invented the Morse code, could they have predicted, you know, the internet and its capabilities in 2022 and airdropping things and internet and the connectivity that we have and the speeds that we're able to transfer information and live stream, you know, as if you're right there, you know, across the entire planet? I don't think so. Their point was perhaps, for example, they use vibrations. And you go, that's stupid. How are you going to lift a 5-ton block using sound vibrations? Well, here's how you do it. You know, it's a different technology pathway that you know, we can move something. Like if you turn on, the analogy they used was a clipper, right? And one of these went off in my bag this weekend, and I was thinking about it. It's like, oh, better get that out, you know, before I get strip searched again. But you can move things with vibrations. Is the equivalent of like seeing something move around a table, to the distance between that and lifting a 5-ton brick, you know, in the air. Is that like the distance between Morse code and the internet? I don't know, but it's something to think about because it's a completely independent technological pathway, and you know, thousands of years of this civilization have potentially been wiped out. I don't know. Go see it. Go check it out. I want to listen to the whole episode, but that's the brain tickle of the day. Now, I was going to get into Hella Sick Books, Chaos by Tom O'Neill. Let's do it next week because that's one of my favorite books, especially as far as counterintuitive or historical revisionism based on facts. One of my favorite things. So we're going to finish up with This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Gyms. This guy, the caption here is, he made the 110s look like 1100s. And it's true. Whose man's is this? Whose dad's is this? Is this in a gym? Is this in their home? I don't know. Yeah, it kind of looks like a gym. I forced myself to watch this entire video. He needs help to get them on his knees. He needs help balancing them on his knees. He's using one hand to like fix the other one. He takes one hand away. He shakes his head. He's breathing. Now, he gets in the zone for like 20 seconds. He's mentally preparing himself, you know. And then I'm looking at his body. I'm like, he doesn't even look strong. Like, what is he going to do with these? And the bench looks actually upright, you know, like he's going to.
A pre-dislocated shoulder video.
And like the anticipation of it, like I didn't realize it was this long at first. He gets one up, he's balancing. It's a real struggle. Like he's moving his body all around to get that one dumbbell up. He's bracing himself for the next one. This is going to be another, you know, this is going to be even harder. He needs help with that one too. And then it's almost, he's wiggling. And he gets half a rep and has to come back down. And that's the type of shit I love. This old man, I can do it. I used to do it at some point. Why are you doing that? Don't use dumbbells that you can't get up by yourself. You shouldn't need a spotter. That's the point of dumbbells. You shouldn't need a spotter. You know, let's try to get a forced rep, but like you should use dumbbells that you can get in place. There's no point to that. And you just took, you know, the time that it took you to do that, you could have done an entire set with 30% less weight. Okay. Speaking of unexpected injuries, this kid has the tiniest wrist I've ever seen, and it looks like he's getting egged on by his friends to like bench a certain amount, and it's just so stupid because this is like the worst case scenario of what happens. He goes up. Now that's not the bar slipping out of his hand. That's his wrist breaking the radius and the ulna, I think they're called. Yeah. Both bones in his forearm, so it snaps back like that. Why not start with some push-ups? That kid clearly isn't prepared to do anything involving weights. And that's why I think peer pressure is stupid in the gym, like doing it for a video, maxing out. And I get that because I've been there before, and it's like funny to like, you know, watch somebody like think they can do a weight and then they can't. You know, like maybe somebody says like, oh, I can do 300 pounds. And it's like, oh yeah, do it. But like this kid's arm snapped in half from what couldn't have been more than 150 pounds. It's just he's so frail. There's no need to do that. Introduce yourself to the resistance training by doing push-ups or body weight movements. Like that kid has never lifted a weight in his life, and he's just not prepared for it. We're not all built the same way, and terrible injuries can happen in the weight room, but only when you're being a fucking idiot. This guy. So not only does he have the entire stack on this tricep pushdown, he has what looks like 7 or 8 dumbbells on top of that. And he has to have a guy behind him spotting him by the hips like he's fucking him in the ass just for him to do this leaning over, you know, bent body, essentially like a cable decline press. So I go, why don't you just do decline press, right? I hope this is a joke, but also it's like, why stop there? Why not put more on? What is the point? Like, your triceps aren't that developed. And it's always these guys who it's like, you don't even have a nice physique, right? Does that tell you something? Do you ever see Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman doing that in the 90s? Or Chris Bumstead? No. No, you don't. That should tell you something. If you've never seen a pro doing that or a guy with a really great physique doing that, that should tell you something. It doesn't tell you everything, but like look around and go like, am I the only dumbass in the gym doing this? And this is why gorillas can't have nice gyms. They just destroy everything. I don't know who set this up, but I had a lot of pleasure watching this gorilla. Just he had to break it. He was like, I need to get this log. And then he just took it back there. Like, but it kind of it looked like, you know, like a cable setup almost. And then they tied something there. I wonder if the whole point is for them to like try to break it off, because it must be like pretty secure on there. But look, goddamn, look how strong he is. And he's just intent on doing it. And I love that energy for the gorilla that he's just like, I must destroy this thing. Because that's how I look at your mom's pussy.
Whoa!
This guy benches 765. It's all him, dude. Another thing where you're requiring 5 people to spot you. I have no idea if this guy actually thinks he can bench it or not. The funny part is he's in what looks like dress shoes and jeans at the gym. And did he tell people he can lift that much? Like, I want to know the backstory of this. But either way, it's fucking stupid. Like, you're putting 8 plates on a side to do a flat bench, and I would be surprised if the guy could do 315 on his own, right? What if somebody slips, right? That's enough weight where, like, sure, you know, like you can drop a lot of weight in your chest, and it probably won't hurt you. I've dropped 365 on my chest, and it was like not that much, but I can bench 365 for reps. This guy definitely can't bench 765 for anything. He couldn't even lift it out of the rack. So what is the point of doing that, especially on probably the most dangerous lift, the bench press for heavyweights when you fuck up? Like, what was the point of that? But I really hope that he was delusional. I want to think that it's not, that he's did it for a joke, but I love knowing that people are like, I can bench 8 plates, watch me. I also need 5 people lifting it with me. Speaking of which, I have mixed feelings about this because I feel like it's been done before, this fat guy posing at the bodybuilding show, and it's funny, I've seen this before, in not this video, but this tactic. And it's a lot to do. It's like, I'm going to do a prank. I'm going to show up and I'm going to sign up and I'm going to get the Speedo, and it's actually like a legit thong, and just be in terrible shape. Maybe he's mentally retarded. I don't know. But the positive thing that I think about it is it shows you, it's a reminder of how ridiculous this is. The barrier to entry is have a body, right? That's the barrier to entry for a bodybuilding show. It's not a sport. He's not going to get hurt, right? You couldn't put that guy in a football game or a wrestling match or a contact sport in which you'd actually get hurt, or even a swim meet where you might drown because you suck at swimming. That's how much of, a beauty pageant bodybuilding is, that this guy can go up there and suck that bad, and there are 0 physical consequences except if people are laughing at him. They don't want you to know the truth. This guy's he's throwing out that traditional handle, getting the double handle that we all used to do rows with, and he's doing side laterals with. And I was like, God damn, that's a good piece of advice. Why has nobody ever done that before? Why have I never seen this? I'm doing it next time I go to the gym. It braces your arms, so essentially you're not using this weak point of your wrist, because that's really what it comes down to, is that's the weak link. When your wrist fails, when your forearm flexors and extensors fail, then you can't do it anymore. But if you put the resistance on the wrist itself, then you're taking the wrist muscles out of it. Brilliant, phenomenal, incredible.
It's a similar thing in gymnastics. An iron cross.
Yes.
It's ridiculously hard. It's virtually impossible. But if you take the rings and grab the far side so that the underside of the ring is bracing your forearm. Then,
show me though. What would your wrist look like? Yeah.
So basically, you're holding the ring here, and then the other end of the ring, instead of being up here, is bracing against your forearm.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So you can practice like that and make it easier on yourself. That's basically doing the same thing. It's putting not all of the force here. You're putting some of it closer to the fulcrum of your body.
So funny. Remember when in old school when Vince Vaughn hits the iron cross?
Oh, yeah. My brother actually has a product called the Ring Thing.
Yeah?
That it's rings, and then to speak to the mechanical advantage, it goes through a lever system, and then you wear a strap around your waist. So you could train muscle ups. The hardest part for people is the turnover. So you could essentially train the turnover with essentially half of your body weight.
So it's like a progressive overload system.
If you're high level, it is. But if you're not, then it can actually get you stronger in that turnover position.
Yeah. Or what I mean is it allows you an intermediate step to advance to this
exactly.
thing.
Yeah. Or if you are advanced, you can do a circuit with it, like a gymnast could do a circuit with it and do an actual workout and get to progressive overload.
Yes.
But it depends on your ability. So you can use it if you're elite, or you could use it if you're novice.
Now, where can I get the Ring Thing?
That's at PowerMonkeyFitness.com.
Power Monkey Fit. I mean, it sounds like a legit product.
Yeah, it is.
We're going to finish off with some slides here, okay? These are some phenomenal slides. This dork, this picture going 1,050 equip bench. What's that, like 340 raw? Mm-hmm. It's a powerlifting dork meme because it's not true. Now, if you can't bench 1,000 pounds equipped, I have to imagine it is a ridiculous. It's probably like 600, to 700 raw, but it's a huge advantage. But many things are, even the high arc, which they've taken out of powerlifting. So this is one of the black dude leaning over squinting. Women scanning for the biggest guy in the room to say they don't want, the biggest guy in the gym in the room to say they don't want to start lifting and look like him. I thought that was brilliant because that's what girls will always do. Well, I don't want to look like that. It's like, oh my God. That's Hella Mark Harley. He's the buffest guy on Instagram. Like, you're never going to look like him. Give it up. Never give up. Speaking of which, never give up. Remember why you started. TikTok motivationals. I love that because I've been thinking about this recently. I'm like, who the fuck watches like TikTok fitness motivation? Like 3 things to get your chest big. Like, I hope teenagers are watching it somewhere because it just pisses me off. It makes me not want to lift. Go talk to that girl. That would be very Sigma of me. In parentheses, I'm scared. I love this whole idea of like Sigma males. Like every guy is a Sigma male now. It does have some meaning and legitimacy, but
what's a Sigma male?
It's like not an alpha
like
or a
alpha.
beta.
Oh.
It's like a guy who's like a lone wolf, but it's like really like cool. Like rather than being a leader, he's like anti-establishment and does his own thing, and like women are attracted to that because it's like mysterious. So it's like also then every guy who doesn't want to pursue alpha traits, it's like, well, I'm a Sigma male. Like I just don't have any friends, So I think that's fine. It's like, or you're just scared of talking to girls and leading other people. Gym rats will say they're chasing greatness when they really just want to bench 245. Agreed. That's not great. This is the take. Oh, Kanye West is tweeting. I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on CrossFitters. And then same tweet, but a few variations. I'm a bit sleepy, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on sumo pullers. And then also, I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on high arc benchers. Which is worse? Somebody posted that. I do think high arc benchers are worse because you still have to pick the weight up in sumo. And what's the one before that? I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but I'm wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on people who say we go gym, spelled J-I-M. Yes. We need to stop. And that's just this guy lifting. Congratulations. We're going to do part 2 next week. Finally, a quote here. It's serious, but it's deep. Some people don't like you because of the inadequacy you trigger inside of them. To cope with their deep-seated insecurities, they avoid you. In extreme cases, block you. The best hiding place for shame is avoidance, and they'll bypass any personal responsibility. It's not about you. Now, I don't know. I'm not referring to anybody specifically who blocks or avoids or does these sort of things, but I do want to think about that relationship between personal responsibility and shame and what you do with that emotion. I think it's okay to experience shame and take it in, but I think the danger always lies in taking shame and going, no, it's because of you, right? If you're ashamed of something, it's okay, and it's okay to look in the mirror and go, there's a reason for that, and I would like to fix something, but the first step is owning up to as much personal responsibility as you can. And I try to do that with myself and can see how uncomfortable it is, right? But I always ask myself, am I being a pussy right now, right? Guys always ask, where the bitch is at? Sometimes it's inside you.